Welcome to Geomatics 2. This is the second course in a sequence of courses that were developed at the Trent University School of Environment in 2017. The first course was Geomatics 1, and I'll talk a little bit about that and introduce the relationship between the two courses in this presentation. I'd like also to review the structure of the course, the evaluation process, and highlight a few of the opportunities that I think exist in this course for students to engage in the geomatics profession. So first, just to position the course, there are two courses, and the Geomatics 2, Geomatics 1, they do stand alone. That is, there's not a prerequisite relationship among them. The idea, though, is that students are perhaps have completed Geomatics 1, or they will have engaged in geomatics courses as part of an undergraduate program or perhaps in a graduate program elsewhere, or perhaps are working with geomatics or geospatial data in their current environment. And so Geomatics 1 focuses really on the 5 areas, introducing them and going through in considerable detail all of the different aspects of remote sensing, GIS, global navigation systems or GPS, elevation modeling and spatial modeling, and it tries to develop at least some competencies and skill sets that I think are both attributable to the environment in which geomatics is expanding in the private sector as well as in the public domain, as well as for research opportunities. Geomatics 2 will focus on the applications of geomatics, particularly examining the geomatics through the lens of an unmanned aerial vehicle program with open source and cloud-based data sets and software. And we introduced this concept of the do-it-yourself Geo App, which is I think a great concept, a great way in which to engage with data at different levels for acquisition, for handling, for quantitative analysis. Here's 3 very brief examples just to show you the range of opportunities within the Geo App world. The first is the Geo Planner app, which a city planner or analyst, an architect, for example, would use to examine, for example, view sheds that might be associated with a particular building, or many different opportunities to think about development. The city of Peterborough is doing a Geo app associated with the emerald ash borer because of all the large number of green ash trees that are likely and will succumb to the invasion of the emerald ash borer, which has already essentially devastated many of the cities just south and west of us, and is also a big area of concern west and in places where the emerald ash borer has been cited, but which has not yet shown its or manifested the high mortality rates. And the third application is this very important one that I think many people will be interested in Geo Apps from the point of view of disaster management, and geomatics as an opportunity for organizing social media engagement. So Geo Apps tell a story, they engage users, they think a lot about ways to more efficiently collect data and answer questions associated with different data sets, provide geo alerts, for example, this geo fence idea, which many of the retail businesses are starting to introduce to allow consumers to benefit from their proximity to a particular environment in terms of advertising or engaging in marketing, and many different ways in which Geo Apps we think are one of the more exciting and interesting ways in which to engage with geospatial information. So this course is really designed around these 5 outcomes, these learning outcomes, and we do have a structure with the ebook and slide presentations, a few video mini lectures that, like this one, but more of the focus is on student activities, which include topical reviews, where students engage in a particular area, then share that information, perhaps with a mini lecture or with another format, through discussion boards and other ways to communicate among the class, with the instructors, and with others. And there's also lab assignments and a major student project that is designed, that is intended to allow you to design a Geo app yourself. So the first thing is the learning outcome. We're hoping that successful students will understand and be able to explain many of the theoretical underpinnings of geomatics tools in environmental research, monitoring, and assessment. There is an emphasis here on critical thinking and inquiry, but also on do-it-yourself, or actually rolling up your sleeves and engaging with geomatics software, geomatics data sets, geomatics concepts, and questions of its significance in geomatics. There will be a module designed around introducing the industries, the sense of which the economic potential of geomatics is only now beginning to be explored, and also some sense of the professional development of geomatics, or the position of geomatician, which I think is starting to become more prominent, is being used in many locations. There will be really a software package that is relatively common in educational environments, and also in some of the government and private sector settings where you may find yourself working. There's a large amount of freeware available, and so what we try to do in the course is emphasize the tools that we have available through the course, which is really through Esri and the ArcGIS suite of GIS modules, or geomatics modules. But much of what we're talking about in this course can be accomplished with many other tools, and we actually design a lab around ensuring that you are beginning to become familiar with those freeware tools, and look at all kinds of different ways in which to solve problems. So what we're not doing in this course is doing a lot of directed, menu-driven, sort of lab-based activities where you need to follow a set of directions that we provide, but more we set the problems, we set the stage, we provide some sense of the world that's out there in which these solutions can be obtained, and then we really drive students, if we can, to engage with those resources and come up with ways to solve these problems on their own. And so in the end, we think that this will provide you with the cutting-edge technology introduction that geomatics requires. We begin with the Module 1, which is an introduction, talks about the learning outcomes, the evaluation, and the course developers, and I'll introduce those in a few minutes. The first module really is a way to engage with the general development of geomatics over the course of the last few decades, introducing the 5 main areas. I call them the 5 pillars: remote sensing, global navigation systems, or GPS, GIS, digital elevation models, and spatial models, or spatial analysis tools, including the notion of autocovariance and autocorrelation, which I think are essential for those of you who are going to be engaged in analysis of point data spread out over a large area, in which much of the prediction of power comes from the spatial interpolation tools. We do provide the concept of Geo Apps, and we introduce the major student project. And in Module 1, we complete the overall introduction of the course with an instructional package to help you get started on your Geo app. So in a little bit more detail, the course does begin with that introduction, and then move into an overview of applications, industries, and the outlook for the profession, including, as I mentioned, the idea that there is a professional position from which geomatics will develop in terms of a career development opportunity for students. So we will ask you in the first, in the second module, to review a particular area of interest. You can choose from a large number of application areas, or perhaps you have your own. We'll ask you to engage with the literature and present your findings to the rest of the class, and to engage really with the participation or a discussion forum format, so that you're not working in isolation, but also so that you benefit from the research that others are doing in other areas. The first lab is orientated around industry, and we include the notion of industry across the full spectrum, so original equipment manufacturers, software developers, consultancy firms, And those who are engaged in proprietary software applications, for example, in the agricultural area, it's fairly well developed. And so I introduced some of those industries to you, but certainly would like to see students with some initiative working in industries that they feel are the more viable for them to learn more about, and to use this as an opportunity to engage. We're hoping that you can reach out, engage with individuals within that industry, an expert, a representative, and again, in the form of some presentation, bring that information back to the class and share that. Finally, Geomatics 2, as I mentioned, does ask for proposals around the major student projects, which should be using this Geo App concept as an organizing principle. Module 3 brings several of those streams or thoughts together into a new component where you would look at remote sensing from unmanned aerial vehicles. We provide a data set that I think you could use. There are many that are available as well, freeware data sets that you could perhaps engage with, or perhaps you have one of your own. Again, a topical review and an analysis of those data. What we want to make sure is that students do work with the raw set and move into a finished output product from those raw data. And that's a very complex set of workflows that I hope many of you will be able to engage with. We use industry standard software for this, and we also have modules that, and you will find them as well. There's almost nothing you would see that needs to be done that couldn't also be done through some freeware package. Of course, there are lots of limitations and problems with using those kind of resources, but I think it's an interesting development in the world, and one that you should be aware of. We do use NV and not ArcGIS for this, and that is a software license through the university. NV is a standardized and relatively widely available image analysis package that has a focus on photogrammetry and UAV image analysis for mosaicing, for doing all kinds of segmentation and machine learning and so on. And so what we want to do is make sure that you have one standard industry package that you're at least able to use through the course. And of course, as I suggested, you can use your own creativity to solve these problems in other ways. Module 4 is an introduction to the freeware that I think you'll encounter in many different settings. There is an example which is for UAV operation design and data processing and management analysis tools. And we'll also start to bring in those freeware tools where you can use your expertise or demonstrate the use of that tool in a application of interest to you. And it may be that's in working on some application or analysis problem that you brought to the course, or can be one that you select from the ones available in the course. The Geo app is I think, an organizing principle that is relatively straightforward for many people to use. You think about it as a way to make your Geo app web-based or perhaps smartphone-based, and different aspects of the major student project will be both through the proposal stage, but also through the engagement with the class and with the instructor to determine the best possible way to complete a Geo app in the constraints of the course that we have. There is a ArcGIS MOOC which is available for Geo Apps. It takes about 4 weeks. It's something that we've all taken as instructors or as other, engaging with the Geo app world. It's certainly something that you may wish to go into further detail with once you've completed a course like this. But what we've tried to do is to give you in this course most of what you would encounter when you take that MOOC through ArcGIS. So there are a number of accompanying materials that I'll just highlight. We do have the ebook, and there are several modules in the ebook that cover most of the concepts that you'll also see. Occasionally there will be videos that supplement that material, but the ebook will be a very, I think, worthwhile resource for you to consult throughout the course. There is an instructional package as part of Module 1, and it's allowing you to access the software through your status as a Trent University course enrollee, and with the instructor you will get the appropriate instructions as to move through the organizational account process. We also provide a number of tables at the end of ebook Module 1 that are not copied in this particular video, but you'll see them in the ebook, and they include a structural view of the different ArcGIS tools, some of the common data types and apps that can be used, that can be created using those Geo App tools, some examples, more than the few I've shown in this short video, and where to go to find more information. And finally, a fairly lengthy, extensive course data set that we provide with a great deal of information about individual layers. It goes all the way from Landsat imagery to ortho photos to UAV imagery and LiDAR and bathymetry data sets that we've assembled, from which you can select your data set that you'd like to work with in the course, or of course, as I've mentioned, you can use your own data set. The evaluation of the course is designed to be progressive. That is, each of the reviews and labs build on the succeeding one or the preceding one, and then over time you'll get a sense as to how your competencies are developing, culminating in the major student project, which will, as I mentioned, be the development of a custom Geo App, one that you've decided is appropriate and which you will share with your colleagues in the course. The development team is comprised of myself and Dominique Chabot. You'll see Dominique and myself in several of the videos. You'll see Griffin Williams in one or two of the videos as well, providing some of the technical support, and Aline Das Rees, who is also engaged in course development in the course and has been at Trent University for the past year. We're all working in the geomatics area, master's, PhD students, myself, a professor, and Dominique is a postdoctoral fellow. And I think this course development team have devoted an enormous amount of time and effort to help you. But of course, we're engaged not only in the development of the course, but potentially in the instructor. The instructors will have a separate video that they'll introduce themselves. One of the things that you'll later be advised to look through is this environmental scan that was conducted a few years ago by the GeoConnections group through Natural Resources Canada. Came up with at least an initial sense of the importance of the industry in Canada and its prospects for the future. And so that's something that I'm just highlighting here, that you may want to get an early sense of the general status of the field and its growth potential as well as its health. I think of geomatics as part of an environmental informatics or an enviromatics field, one that is expanding to include bioinformatics and geoinformatics and lots of urban planning informatics, some infrastructure informatics that are coming from the new developments that are occurring around placing sensors and having large amounts of survey data available for ultimately lots of different varieties of applications. So it's part of that, but we want to focus on the geospatial components, the geomatics components, and it may be that there are ways to bring in some of the other aspects of environmental informatics into a geomatics course, and I would encourage students to consider those kinds of developments. I'd also like to highlight that there is a kind of a user community that's started to develop around jobs, around technology, around education and volunteer opportunities, and certainly news. It's called GoGeomatics Canada. They have a website that's quite extensive. I looked on it just a few days ago and found two interesting posts. A lot of blogging going on in the field, obviously. The first is that I just highlighted here is the impact of machine learning, including things like random forest, and we'll be introducing some of those machine learning concepts through this course, and the unmanned aerial vehicles, which is another very, very pressing area, urgent area for Transport Canada and for others to understand in order to really prepare for what many are feeling is going to be a significant economic stimulus that's coming. And so again, opportunities for further reading just to prepare yourself to engage in the course in the coming weeks. GoGeomatics, I highly recommend.